Well, hi there, Marcella Vail. We are so happy to have you here with us today. And so I'm just going to kind of give a little highlight of your background because I think it's really interesting and I'm so excited to get to know you better. But Marcella is an executive leader and a cultural strategist. And I think she truly embodies what we are hoping to get out of Hiring for Good by bringing in the business and the operations, being very forward with people, heart-centered mission and vision. So, Marcella, do you want to just kind of walk us through your background and the journey of where you came from to where you are today?
Well, I appreciate that introduction, and I just got goosebumps because if somebody were to say, like, what is your purpose, maybe in life, but certainly what I do in my career, it really is bringing those two things together because I really believe that is what helps our organizations thrive. And when our organizations thrive, our communities thrive. And so I really appreciate you highlighting those couple of things. I have to really start, when you answer this question about, like, what's your background, where do you come from? It's like, where do you even start with that, right? And as I was reflecting on, I really do have to go back to my roots. Being from Oregon, I am a fifth generation, come from a family of 5 generations of entrepreneurs. And my grandmother used to say that she was the boss's granddaughter, the boss's daughter, the boss's wife, the boss's mom, now the boss's granddaughter or grandmother, and she was the boss herself. And through that, I just learned this just sense of commitment and grit and building something to last and something for good. And I really have just taken, that example. I've got a very different direction than most in my family. Most in my family are still working today for the family business. And I was the first to go off to college and follow that route. But that just rooted in that family business and what it meant to hold other people's livelihoods in your hands really meant something to me. And we were all a part of that. And that has really stuck with me. And I just think it has given me a different connection to what it means to have a purpose in an organization and particularly a business. So that's kind of where it started for me. I originally, what am I going to do when I grow up? Especially being the first one to go to college, I thought broadcast journalism. I was going to go be a TV anchor, and that just seemed like such a fun, glamorous, important role. And I had an internship my senior year of college and quickly learned that absolutely not. That was not the role for me at all.
After you spent
Yeah. And luckily, this was sort of the other, I really hadn't thought that strategy out very well. I was a comms major, so I had a lot of breadth to be able to fall back on. But I do think that having that communication background as well has served me so very well. And we were pushed to write and think and write pages in even math class. And so that communication piece is another element that, especially from an operational perspective and how I see it play out in my new role, it's often the thing that is often just overlooked. And so that has served me well. But that is where I ended up. And yeah, so career-wise, I was sort of thinking through this. I've ended up in 8 different industries over my career and several different roles, starting in sales and marketing and doing a bit of operations, business consultancy, which I learned that was not the right thing for me. I want to be in the business, building the business. Went to then play in the people operations space, which I can talk a little bit more about that. And this new journey into also Advocates for Life Skills and Opportunity. It's a statewide nonprofit supporting folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities, really have choice in life, really is a culmination of all of those things. So just, I guess, a little bit of speed view there.
No, that was fascinating, in 8 different industries, and to go through them, I'm sure there's a lot of similarities and then there's a lot of differences. Yeah, what did you find the commonality of the different industries?
I think for me, in all of those roles, starting on the sales and marketing side and then going into brand specifically, and from there, each one of my roles really had an internal focus. And at Washington Mutual, actually, I was there for about 8 years. We started the first ever employee engagement team for the retail bank. And at that time, WAMU was known for its quirky, friendly, welcoming brand where anyone can go in and bank and get a warm, friendly experience no matter how many dollar signs were in their bank account. And that was really operationalized in how we gave customer service and talked about it internally. And my role was really to bring our brand to life internally. And that through line has really been something that I've carried throughout. It's really how to build your brand through your team members. And the way you do that is having a really clear purpose that if you think of the vision as the why you do what you do, the greater change you're really trying to create in the world, and the mission is the what, how do you execute on that every day? And then your values are the how, like that's your roadmap to really operationalize your brand internally and build culture. And then what your customers experience, it's just so visceral in what you're creating within your organization. So that was really the through line, and I think it played out at no better than when I was at Ruby. I was hired by the founder and CEO, Jill Nelson, and she had this idea of building something that could help small businesses through warm, friendly human connections. And the way we did that was really to focus on building culture. This is at a time where, that was sort of starting to be a thing, but it was still novel. And we were able to prove it out that we could invest in our culture and we could realize it in our business results. And so she brought me on to, as we were scaling, we had just gone through the first private equity transaction, and we were ready to grow. And the biggest thing was, how do we keep this warm, quirky, friendly culture as we grow? And so I came in to get to be a part of that. And the leadership team that we built all had that unification around it is about people-powered, people first, and focus on our small businesses. And that purpose was just so driven. I used to kind of say, yes, we were a very successful business. We have just an amazing growth strategy. And we almost function like a nonprofit in how we think about our purpose. And I think more of the for-profit world can certainly learn and lean into that. And of course, we have lots to learn from each other on both sides. So,
wow, it sounds like such a formative experience on multiple levels, but you were leading that initiative. What are some of the other most powerful leadership experiences that you've had that have really shaped you as a person? And what were those lessons learned?
Yeah. I think for me, it is really being so very attuned to your blind spots and really dropping your ego at the door, having really having that ego check in everything that you do and that sense of curiosity. And for me, I'm both high energy and passionate, and I have a lot of ideas. So sometimes those things really get in the way of that humility and that curiosity. And so it's really like understanding, how your defaults can get in the way of your desires of how you want to show up and be. I think the other thing is really watching the energy that you create in a room. We have so much power with our energy. And if we're not modeling the dynamics that we want others to create in that space, we're going to create something we don't even know that we are. And so that constant just awareness of the energy that I am bringing, that will sort of create that sense of trust and connection and feedback that really helps teams build and thrive. So those are some of the things that I just hold true to, or really reflect on every day. And it is a daily practice. I sort of have this like end of the day, like, not that work ever truly stops. We all know that, it is a work-life integration, and I've embraced that fully, especially being a mom of 2 kids, and life fits in and work fits in, and you make it all happen. But I have this sort of like seal the day practice, and it's really looking at those qualities of how did I show up in that way today? What should I have done differently in this? And having that self-reflection. I think the other thing for me is to match your calendar to the goals that you're trying to strive for. So I'm a fanatical like planner calendar, this like monthly, weekly practice, but it's so true, especially being in a nonprofit where we are people that support people. We have people's lives that we help them thrive, support them, and crises can come up, and that can easily sort of sweep away the day and what you're trying to move forward as an organization. And so being so planful of how you, if you've needed to shift things around, it's that constant calendar Tetris to make sure that you're still achieving your goals and showing up in the way that you want to show up. And then a part of that is I have this desire and goal that I'm working towards as well, to meet all 350 people in our organization and to meet with all of our management teams. So, I guess 2 levels below me, and really build those relationships across the organization and be available and have that sense of familiarity is so important. That is what knocks out that hierarchical, BS that just doesn't serve us. And so those are some of the things that I just think about on a daily basis. Also was doing great when I came in. There are some amazing operational leaders there that have dedicated their lives to IDD services. They did not need me to come in and, be an operational superstar. What they needed is to help us take what we do so well and scale it and do it as one also. It's one of our goals right now, our hashtag one also. That's where, I see my role coming in to support this team. How I'm going to do that is by really creating that sense of community and familiarity so that it feels like one team and, not a space of hierarchy, which can easily formulate and hold us back.
Absolutely. And we'll jump kind of a little bit further into the scale. But before we do, I wrote down 5 words as you were going through it of values that you operationalize every day. You said commitment, grit, purpose, humility, and I added humility. You were anti-ego, but curiosity. So those are big, powerful words of values that you are bringing to the table. So how are you able to operationalize that to scale?
I think you're taking those elements and you're building it into even how you go about something as, foundational as like strategic planning. How are we looking at what is going to move this organization forward? How are we getting curious about what's not working? So I'm a big fan of taking time on the upfront to make sure that we're developing the right strategy to solve the right problem. We don't know. We can't fix what we don't understand. And we've got to get all the voices to the table, especially in an environment where we have people who have been supporting folks with IDD for a really long time, who have so much to share. By no means am I an expert in our field yet. And shouldn't be yet speaking on behalf of our field. So it's really important that I am creating spaces for that feedback and that curiosity to help us really, develop the right way to move us forward. And so it's then it's really thinking about, how do we support people at the center of change? I think is another place that we can easily just accidentally push the fast forward button. And some people we know this, we've all been through the change management, different philosophies and methodologies, but it really is slowing down and understanding with your group how to really think about where people are in this change and support people, along that path. I think the other thing with connection and commitment, the way we approach supporting people with intellectual and developmental disabilities is self-driven and person-centered. And that's a phrase you'll hear a lot out there. And we really try to operationalize that in the sense that it's self-directed. It's by that person's choice. We're taking their lead. And that's really almost opened me up. I think I was doing this intuitively anyway, but how I lead the team, how I lead each person. How do I coach that person in a person-centered, self-directed way? So those are some of the ways that I think about operationalizing those values and how I lead, both from, the larger strategic initiatives down to, how we are helping the individuals grow and hit their next set of goals.
Wow, that's just, there's so much there. That's really a beautiful way that your own behavior is being dictated somewhat or formed by the work you're doing from a mission driven perspective. It's really beautiful. You mentioned how you're supporting your people. What qualities do you look for when you're building teams?
Yeah. Well, I definitely think that sense of not take ourselves too seriously and that ego piece is a big one for me. That we are team-centric, folks that collaborate, are willing to collaborate. And I'm one of those people who can easily kind of jump back and forth from big strategy to how do we get shit done. And understanding some people are really defaulted on either side. What I really look for, though, is that appreciation and awareness of that other skill set, so that we do have that balance in that and can both have those idea generations that are so exciting, that help paint the future of the world we want to live in, and those people who are all right, let's get it done. And I love that energy. I love that beat of when you have those minds come together. And I think teams that are really clear on their purpose and why they're there, and are also proactive in building connections themselves. It's something I'm trying to, that's what breaks down silos, is having those standing one-on-ones with people you don't work with every day. That is how we start to really integrate our values and where we're going as an organization, is when those relationships are built and you have an understanding across team lines. And we all get so busy, those things can really fall by the wayside easily.
Absolutely. And so you're fairly new at also
sure am.
8-9 months in. Yeah. And if there was something that you wish you would have known coming in, what would it be?
Oh.
Because again, this is a new industry.
It is.
Very different mission, values.
Yeah.
And your first foray into nonprofit work
first nonprofit,
as a nonprofit
and
leader.
First foray into the COO space, both nonprofit, and that role was not on my radar 8 months ago.
Yeah.
And I really thought after 8 years of leading people and culture at Ruby that would be my path. I was getting my SHRM SCP, which was the hardest test I've ever taken in my life. And was in the running for some other opportunities along those lines. And then I met my now boss, Brett Turner, who's our CEO, who's been also now leading also for 20 years, dedicated his life to folks with IDD. And there was just something about this organization and the desire to grow and that desire to really look internally and do that hard work. this is, it like fed all of my, like, the beat of the business and the work. Something I didn't share in sort of my intro that certainly impacted my life and perspective and, connects me more deeply to this work is my sister is deaf and legally blind. She's 5 years younger, but we were really close, and I was often her interpreter at family gatherings or out and about, and also, grew up surrounded by folks with very diverse disabilities, and that, just looking at life through her lens was another thing that just like, I had to follow this path. And I guess the thing I wish I would have known is again, like an organization, it's complex. We have 5 different service lines. We're in 9 different counties. Oh. It almost, it really kind of grew a third overnight by bringing on a whole area of Klamath Falls for an organization that was winding down there. And we got the opportunity to welcome their operations and their people into also. And so, going about how also was, and then suddenly you've like jumped in size considerably. And through that, I think that there was more competition across lines than I expected. And, even in a nonprofit, people want, their areas to shine and their teams to shine. And maybe even sometimes more so there because you are, there's limited resources. So maybe that's one thing is, all right, there's some of that. And then breaking down the silos across teams is something that I'm like, yep, we got to work on that a little bit.
Well, any merger acquisition, anytime when you're adding or even divesting, it's such a challenge operationally. It's such a challenge culturally to integrate. And give us some learnings on this process, because a third overnight.
Yeah. Yes. I think it really goes back to putting in the time and the grit and the hard work to really meet every person if you can, and really have that one-on-one time with every level of leadership and build those relationships and the familiarity and listen to the pain points. We cannot, I've said this so many times, I feel like since I've been at Also, like I can't wave this magic wand and solve that issue today, but I am hearing it. Here's how it fits into the bigger roadmap of what we're trying to, work on. Here's where I got to prioritize it. I'm coming to it. It just might be number 3 or 4 down the line, but I got it. And circling back with people, and then that constant communication, coming from that comms background, that's always the first thing on my mind is have we met everyone along this path? And so, really building up that internal comms function of what is who needs to know and who needs to know what, and how we don't have leaders that have the tools to even cascade information. And if people don't know it, they make it up. And it's often not the narrative that is always aligned with actually what's happening. And so being very methodical and intentional about the communication piece is really, really critical. And I think another thing that is often overlooked, and it's not a step-by-step or focused on what each, kind of back to that person-centered, what each group really needs to be successful in that. I think storytelling is another thing that really does connect people back together. Like, what are we doing at the end of the day? And sharing those stories across the organization, to connect people to the people in other counties where we're serving. Just a few things. Yeah.
I think that's beautiful. I do. And again, I love when you said, if somebody doesn't know, they'll make it up. I think that it really is true. And so again, to have that strategy of here's what you need to know, here's how we'd like to communicate it. I think that's really important, and people forget that. And forget it, especially when you have people out in the community. Because as a leader, oh, I knew that. What do you mean you don't know that?
Yeah.
Because you haven't communicated it.
It's really true. And I've been in conversations where we're building comms plans, and it's like, well, do we need to tell them all the detail? And I guess I am always pushing for give them as much as you possibly can. Give them more. And make sure every leader in the organization, even to the frontline, managers, can speak to the why. Because the last thing that you want the last situation you want is, why are they making this change? And the manager's like, I don't know. Like, it's up there. I don't know. And so that really preparing all of your leaders to understand. And people might not always align and agree, and you can have those conversations as well. And prepare them for those conversations, but really making sure that you give as much information and a clear why behind whatever it is. And then also looking at sort of that change burden. And this is sort of another thing of breaking down silos and, wrapping our arms around communication and organization. The more change you stack on, it could be tiny little changes or big changes, but it still creates this burden even for good change. And so really sort of monitoring that, that sort of change wave for your audiences and making sure that you're strategic even about that. So good changes, even if you have, many, are not going to feel good to folks. And we already know, mental health is real within our teams, our communities, and particularly in a space like ours, where the work is it is heart work, and it hits your heart, and it can impact folks' own mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Sure.
absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, there's so many wonderful learnings here. If you could go back in time and just give advice to your young self as you were, just starting your career, and maybe you were still planning on broadcast journalism, maybe not. But what would you tell that young person?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. One, probably to have a little more fun.
Yeah.
I tend to be, maybe it's back to that, that farmer grit. My work is my passion, is my hobby. And I think at times you can get too serious and you forget to sort of like find the fun in it all, which is something, back to sort of managing your energy. Like, how does the team see you have that buoyancy? Like that just like, yeah, it's hard work and we're working hard, but there's a lot of joy in it as well. And to not worry so much. Like, you know what? It's all going to be okay. That next opportunity will come and find its way, and one will lead to the next. I guess are sort of two things that I would look back on and say to myself, just chill.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Yes.
I'm like, wow, I need to learn that one.
There's nothing that's going to happen.
Yeah.
We've all been through COVID.
Yes.
We've all gotten workplaces home.
Yeah.
There's nothing that can come that we cannot handle.
Absolutely. And so here we are talking about leadership learnings and things. And so this podcast, being Hiring for Good, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. This question is one I've been excited to answer, and I hope I can articulate it in the way that I want. So for me, it goes back to, if we're building amazing, strong organizations, our communities are going to thrive, and there is going to be more opportunity for all. And that also comes with people growing in their own careers and goals. And so when I think about hiring for good, I'm sort of hiring folks in my network community for life, even if they leave. So destigmatize leaving, like that can be a really good thing. And this person is sort of taking all that they learned from the team they were on and taking it to another amazing organization. and helping that next organization. So for me, it really is this like rising tide as we build great teams and bring people on. Like I expect you to go get that next amazing role and find your next big challenge and bring all that you learned to that new team. So for me, I really think about it like that of like, all right, this is a moment in time and we're going to do some awesome, amazing work here. And maybe we'll see each other in another space sometime. But
I love that. I've never really thought about it because maybe I'm a little old school and I think of measuring success with retention and longevity.
Sure.
But that could be generational too, because I look at my oldest son who 2-3 years and moves on. And so that's a fantastic perspective for me to remember that it's okay when people leave.
It's sort of that optimal retention. Like,
yeah.
When somebody gets itchy, I started to get like, okay, in my last couple of years at Ruby, I think I'm ready. I'm ready. Like, let's go do this. And I totally celebrate that. So
it's a beautiful ethos, honestly, to bring to the new paradigm of how people are working. People aren't staying in the same organization for their whole life anymore, but like what a beautiful web they create, huh? It's really
absolutely.
that's a new one, honestly, and it's beautiful. Thank you.
And I think what's so interesting is exactly like you said. We live in a very provincial, small town environment where we know a lot of the same people. So whether it's today or 10 years from now, you'll cross paths again and to celebrate the person's success. What a beautiful thing. Wow, Marcella. I've learned a lot.
Thank you. Wow. Well, what a pleasure. Thank you very much for engaging in the conversation with us. It was such a privilege.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and just before we go, I would love to kind of circle back on that scalability. Yeah. So here's also you've grown. What's your 5-year plan?
Yeah, we have our list, let's say. We just went through a strategic planning exercise and, really kind of went back to first educating what is a 3 to 5 year plan. I think a lot of folks are confused. What is the purpose of that? And then how does it fit within your vision, your mission, and your values, right? So that 3 to 5 strategic plan should be, those bigger initiatives you're doing to really move that vision forward. For us, we want to be able to grow and scale. And right now we're operating in more silos, both across our 5 service lines and then also our counties. So it's really bringing together all of our policies and procedures. So we're doing this exercise where we're bringing those teams together who are siloed today. What are you doing? What are you doing? Okay, let's bring the best together. And then let's get those things into a space that are accessible and consistent across the organization. So kind of back to the communication and accessibility piece too. I mean, we have folks that work within our residential homes, but we also have job coaches that are working from, job to job, and then folks going into other folks' homes that aren't sitting at a laptop or a computer. So how do you create that access to information and communication, when folks are working, off their mobile devices? So really thinking about all of our standard operating procedures through a really user-friendly, accessible way. So bringing all of that together. Our number one company initiative right now is communication. Actually, because if we can get that right, it paves the way for so much more. And then really focusing on our big opportunities. Employment is a huge opportunity for folks with IDD, and how, especially with opening our workplaces up and thinking about how to support the whole person and getting creative about accommodations. And the way we approach employment is very much by the goals and desires of the people. So that is just a huge opportunity for our Oregon businesses that if anybody wants to talk about, how to support someone with IDD, in their workplace, we've got all kinds of amazing strategies to help make that awesome for all. And then also our other really exciting growth opportunity is to partner with affordable housing to create more housing for folks with IDD so that we can do what's called supported living, where we can be the support for people in their own homes versus having people live in more of a group home environment, which goes back to that independence and that choice and that self-directed life people deserve to live. So those are some of the things. I have a big long list.
But Marcella,
I'll stop there.
I just had to say, you made the right choice coming here 8 months ago because you lit up and you can see that passion within you. And so definitely the right choice.
Appreciate that. I don't think I understood how deep it went until I really started to connect with the people that we support, and particularly being here in Oregon and Fairview Hospital only closing down in the early 2000s, where folks with IDD were tucked, hidden away, or forced to leave their families. There is just something really deep there for me, and for when we talk about how we support people with IDD, and again, I am learning this space, learning the language. So I speak carefully here, but for me, choice. It's choice. We all deserve choice. We all deserve to live the life that, feels good for us. That's our best life. And I get really excited about how we do that in that very person-centered way across a team of people that have dedicated their lives to this field and to the people we support. It was definitely a great choice, and it fills my soul every day.
Well, what more can you ask for?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think we have hit our time.
Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you so much. And I will do that shout out. Oregonians, if you are looking for opportunities to employ creatively, reach out to Marcella.
Thank you so very much.
This was wonderful.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today at Hiring for Good. If you were inspired by our conversation, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you want to learn more about our executive search services, check us out at www.hiringforgood.net or our company website, Acumen Executive Search.
Thanks so much, and don't forget to join us next time for another in-depth conversation about transformational leadership. Until then, have fun.